Death. The sort of thing most people who are of this mortal coil believe to be as final. There are those of us who believe there is something more beyond this waking existence that we call reality. I've never been a stranger to what lies beyond the waking world, and unlike most children, I was hypersensitive to emotions and energies around me. My experiences with the strange and macabre and the things that would make your skin crawl have always been seen as something strange, but what you see as strange, I've found as normal in my life. It was an everyday life for me. It was a fascination for me. Anyone who knows what is out there in the dark knows that the truth is stranger than fiction. Welcome, friends, to the very first episode of the Cemetery Gates Paranormal. My name is Josh, and in this series we will delve into the strange tales of hauntings, haunts, spooks, and murder, with a little splash of folklore and tales from around the region. Before we jump into our stories, discussions, and experiences, I just want to give you a preface to my own personal history with the paranormal. While not as elaborate or terrifying as most, it was still enough to pique my interest in what lies beyond the mortal world, and has always driven me to find proof or answers as to what's out there. As a young child, my sister and I grew up in an apartment complex. Not something as large as you would see on TV, the very large building, hundreds, sometimes thousands of units stacked upon each other. But this was a very small unit. This was situated in a very small town in southwest Virginia. Some of my listeners and watchers, you'll know where this is. Others I won't divulge. However, in this particular area, it's in the Appalachian region. This particular building, it was a row of 4 townhouses, side by side. My grandmother lived in number 4. Now, if you're looking at the front of the building, I'm going to give, for those of you who are watching, I'm going to give you a visual picture of the unit itself here. My grandmother was in number 4. And then my father and I, we lived in unit number 2. As you look at the photo, number 4 was on the far left side, and it kind of went backwards, 4, 3, 2, 1. 2 units on the left side of the building, 2 units on the right side of the building. Of course, the 2 inner units were 2 and 3, with the wall dividing them. So at this early age, I stayed with my grandmother predominantly while my dad was in the military at a very young age. And he also worked when he came home. So my grandmother had myself and my sister predominantly for the majority of the time. So this was it. This started in 1987-ish, 88. Then, of course, I got older. Dad got out of the military. I came home. The normal life that you would lead. However, for this particular apartment complex, behind them were an additional 2 apartments. But my sister and I were the very first 2 children to ever live in these apartments. And it was well known that the landlord at the time didn't like children, even though he had his own and had his own grandchildren. I guess it was sort of like me. He didn't like anybody else's kids that weren't his own or that he wasn't related to. All of my experiences with this particular individual were pretty much negative. He was always hateful. He always had something to say, something to gripe about. So I tried to avoid him as much as possible. Later on, there would be additional tenants that would move in with children and everything. So I've never really had like a bad experience with him. It just wasn't pleasant. It wasn't pretty. He wasn't very nice. So, excuse me, thirsty. This whole thing surrounding this one individual is what kind of weirded me out. Okay, so he didn't like children. Certainly didn't like me. It's okay, I didn't like him very much either. So, as I got older, I started to stay with my father in the Unit 2 apartment. So at this point, I was a teenager. Dad worked overnight, 6:45 to 6:45, so I spent majority of the nights by myself, unless I had friends over, in which I did frequently. I'd had friends with me constantly, not for any particular reason, it sucked being there by myself all night. But on this particular first occasion, it was just me. I did the normal. I came home, ate dinner, spent some time with my grandmother, then went to my dad's apartment, movies, video games, music, the normal stuff that a teenager would do after you get out of school. So I did all that, and then of course around 11:30-ish, this was before I was a total night owl and stayed up all night doing whatever. So I remember I got up off the couch, I turned the TV off. We always left the light on over the sink in the kitchen, so I turned all the lights off except for that one, and I headed upstairs to my bedroom. So as you walk up the stairs, I want you to envision this, is as you walk up the stairs, directly in front of you, there is the bathroom. And then if you take immediately, like a sharp left U-turn, you would go into my father's room, and then if you just took a left turn, you'd go into my room. So it was kind of, here's Dad's door, here's my door. So we were kind of cornered into each other. So, ever since I was a small child, Dad had a rocking chair in his room, and I still have this rocking chair. It's actually in my garage. It was actually the rocking chair that he would use to rock myself and my sister to sleep when we were kids. So, Dad always kept an air conditioner going. All year round, didn't matter what month it was, how cold it was, there was an air conditioner going in his room. And I can kind of understand that now as I'm an older person. So, when he would leave for work, he would close his door to his bedroom. So, this particular evening, I remember him specifically because you could hear the door click. As you closed it, you could hear the latch physically click. So, I heard that. And he went to work. I'd gone up to the restroom a couple of times that evening, and it was closed. I usually kept my bedroom door open if I wasn't in there, so the cat can kind of tool around and do whatever he wanted to do. But I got everything ready, got everything put away, got everything set for the night. Turned off all the lights downstairs, made sure the door was locked, then made my way upstairs. So, as I rounded the top of the stairs, I remember the bathroom light was off, and as I was going to my room, and when you're walking to my room, if you turned your head left, you could look directly into my dad's room. But if you were looking straight ahead, it would be in your peripheral vision. So as I was going into my room, it just caught me out of the corner of my left eye. His door was open, and I remember specifically it was closed. I knew that for sure, that it was closed. And there in the corner, the rocking chair was rocking back and forth. And just the slightest movement is what caught my eye. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even noticed. I'd have just walked on by and wouldn't have even cared. But as I stopped and turned my head, there was the landlord sitting in the chair, rocking back and forth. The thing that got me about this is he didn't like me, I didn't like him, and I couldn't figure out why he would be there. So, and I knew specifically it was him. He was wearing your standard light-colored khaki pants, moccasin-style brown leather shoes, and a light brown plaid design shirt, or plaid flannel style shirt. It wasn't exactly flannel. It was more like a dress type shirt. And then his silver hair. And this would be my first encounter with him over the years as I grew up there. I lived in this particular building for about 20 years. So that shook me. I ran back downstairs. That was it. I couldn't figure it out. So it never happened when my dad was home, so I don't know if this is more of just my paranoia or my mind playing tricks on me. But to me, his dislike for me being there carried over, and after he passed, and he was wanting to make sure that I wasn't, for lack of better terms, screwing up the apartment or making any damage, whatever. But as time would go on, he would migrate away from the chair. I would see him standing in the corner of my dad's room, and like you got the rocking chair in this corner, and then you got an empty corner over here adjacent to that rocking chair, and he would be just standing in the corner, not doing anything, just staring. There were occasions where Dad's door would open on its own. Bathroom door would open on its own. And I've tried to debunk both of those. The latches are solid. There's no draft going through. There were several occasions where there would be knocks on the front door and no one would be there. The one thing that freaked me out the most is the area that I lived in. The streets rolled up at about 8 o'clock. After that, there's nobody out there doing anything. So, sitting on the couch in the living room, you could look directly to the back door, and there was a window in the back door. And we always kept blinds over it. The thing that would always alarm me the most is I knew that nobody would be out there, but if I would turn and look, there would be the silhouette of someone standing in front of that window. Just from like the shoulders up, you could see the silhouette and the blinds coming through from the street light that was behind the apartment complex. And there would be no one there. Ever since then, I've been more sensitive to the things around me than most people would. Strange sounds, smells. Maybe I was just paying more attention or being more focused on what was going on around me because I've had these experiences. But ever since this particular experience, I've been fascinated. I had to have answers. I've always been interested in the strange, in the macabre. Going graveyard hopping as a teenager with my friends, or just taking a stroll through, maybe doing some research. So that's what prompted me to start this series, is my fascination. In future episodes, you will be hearing stories from friends, family, and other acquaintances about what's going on, or the experiences that we've had together. Of course, they're free to tell stories of their own, but there's going to be a lot of these situations where we're going to have experiences together. I'm also going to be addressing some of the folklore and stories from around my region. And if any of you guys have some that you want to add, shoot them over to me. And we'll see what we can do about getting them on the podcast or on the video. Of course, I'm still haven't worked out what platform I'm going to release the podcast on. Of course, the videos are always going to be on YouTube, so that's a given. Whenever we do the podcast, it'll be up on YouTube for you to watch. There's also going to be a Facebook page. And once I get all that sorted out, I'll give you guys the link so you can come like it and subscribe, bell button, all that jazz. So if you are a lover of the dark, the strange, the weird, the macabre, join us. There will be a new episode every Friday. And let's explore this world together and see if we can get some answers. And see if maybe the dark will reach out to us. Thank you so much for listening and watching on this initial episode. Again, this was just a preface of my own experience, what got me into the paranormal and the weird. Thank you so much for watching, listening. Please come back next Friday. We'll have a new episode. There will be maybe some shorts and stuff in the middle. Who knows? We'll just see where this goes. But again, to everyone, thank you for joining us here on the Cemetery Gates Paranormal. Good night.